changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me.
Keep going.
Just to 10, right?
No, to 16.
Oh, I'm sorry, 16.
Yep.
Okay. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that matched with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. And the angel God said to me in the dream, Jacob. I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see all the goats that mate with the flock are striped and spotted and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now rise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion of inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded to him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do.
All right, and John Kelly, 17 to 21.
So Jacob arose and sent his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household goods. And Jacob tricked Laban and the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had, and arose and crossed the Euphrates, and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead.
All right. Got some footnotes there that you can see. In verse 20, stole the heart of, and it's also in verse 26 and 27. A little bit later on, and a little bit of an interpretation. The Hebrew says that he crossed the river, and the ESV tells us, but that river is the Euphrates. Okay, so that's where he is. And there's a map coming up, so that, but it's not going to help here because we're going to be further south for that map. So, but that's coming up. All right, so it says that in verse 1, Jacob is overhearing some of the sons of Laban, that there's some dissension or disunity. They are not happy with each other. And this harkens back to when Lot and Abraham separated as well. There are so much flocks that there is a little bit of dissension between the people that are taking care of the flocks and owning the flocks. And so Jacob overhears this and is afraid. Okay, so that's what the context of this is. He thinks that he may be in some trouble. And so Jacob noticed that not only the sons of Laban, but Laban himself. And literally the Hebrew says the face of Laban was no longer with him, which is interpreted, he's not happy with Jacob anymore. And it's his son-in-law, so there's some dissension there, disunity there. And so apparently this is a change as well. This is something that happened recently. Remember too that Laban had tried to trick Jacob by keeping all the good sheep and goats for himself. And it didn't work because he was thinking, I'll keep Jacob poor, so he'll stick around and I'll have control over him. Didn't work. So God blessed him, and that's the whole point of this, is that God does all this work, even though Jacob thinks it's because of some sticks that he put in front of the sheep and goats. It's God that did all this. And so Laban himself is tricked again. Not necessarily by Jacob, although he's going to blame Jacob, but God himself. And so in verse 3, Jacob has a plan. And this is typical of Jacob. He's going to run away. He's already done this once, so he falls back into that plan. And he's going to, he's thinking to run away, but God just jumps right in. The Lord, Yahweh, says to Jacob, return to the Lord, the land of your fathers, and to your kindred, and I will be with you. Because the word orders it, Jacob is not fearful, but proceeds in the name of the Lord. For these are the words of God, who is liberating Jacob from distress and promising to defend him in the future. That's Luther's take on this verse. So, Luther thinks that Jacob is following God, so who am I to argue with Luther? I love this phrase, I will be with you. No greater words, perhaps, in the Bible ever uttered for people. God is with us. Numerous Hebrew expressions of encouragement for God's people contain these words, which often also threaten defeat or punishment for enemies of God's people. Many times it's because God's people are under attack, and God tries to let them know, I am going to be with you, and there is going to be a consequence for the people who are attacking you. And in biblical theology, God fills the whole universe with his presence, according to Jeremiah 23:23, and providential goodness, according to Matthew 5:45, Acts 17:24-28, Romans 1:20, and the founding fathers of America. The providential goodness of God was well established, not only in Scripture, but by people that followed God, and that motivates them to do things. However, God is especially present with his saving power and grace, where he promises to be present. Now, he promises to be present with us through word and sacrament. Basically, his son, Jesus. Wherever Jesus is, God is, right? Because Jesus is God, and that is one of Jesus' name or titles, Emmanuel, God with us. So Jesus is present according to his grace wherever his gospel and sacraments are present. So if you're feeling alone, where's a great place to go if you're feeling alone and abandoned?
To the Bible.
To the Bible, okay. Where else?
To the Lord in prayer.
To the Lord in prayer. Where else?
Maybe down here at St. Andrew's Church.
Maybe go to church, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? So you come and you're with your brothers and sisters, and the Word of God is here, the sacraments are here, definitely. All three of those are correct.
It's interesting, if you look at a Gideon's Bible in a hotel room, they have it on the inside cover. If you're feeling this, look at these verses. If you're feeling lonely, is one.
Yep. And so Isaiah 7, Matthew 1, and Matthew 28 are great verses for when you're feeling lonely. This one is a great verse. When he's feeling not only, I mean, how could Jacob feel lonely? He's got 12 kids and 4 wives. He's not alone. But he feels,
His problem is getting lonely.
yeah, his problem is not having enough downtime. So Jacob is, but in spite of all of the crowd of people around him and his family, he still feels alone. And so God comes and says, I am with you. And so, what is Jacob's response? Right away. All right. He sends for Rachel and Leah, who was out in the field where the flock was, okay, to make sure they were ready to leave their homeland. He's ready. He's getting them ready. And he says to them in verse 5, I see that your father does not regard you with favor as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. Okay, notice that he doesn't say my God yet. It's still the God of his father, Isaac, the God of his grandfather as well, Abraham. And then it isn't his God just yet. Okay, he hasn't had this. He's had a personal revelation with God, and we just saw that at the end of our reading for this section, the God of Bethel. But there will be even a more personal meeting with God, and that's coming up in the next chapter, chapter 32, where Jacob will literally wrestle with God. So, all right, so he's talking with Rachel and Leah, and he says, you know that I served your father with all my strength. Yet, your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. This is not something that's actually recorded in Scripture, but this is Laban altering the deal that he made with him. But God did not permit him to harm me. That's what the mottled and the speckled and the spotted. So that idea is there. Now, interestingly enough, he uses the word cheated, and that may have clicked something in Rachel's mind. Okay, it's because Rachel also is going to try to cheat her father. So we'll get to that. Let's see. Now this 10 times, there's two ways to look at this. It's either literally, Laban changed the deal 10 times, or this is a symbolic number, where 10 can mean constantly. He's constantly changing this deal. It's just a phrase, parenthetical or a proverbial saying. The number 10 is often associated with a group of persons in Semitic languages, though the association is not strong in the Old Testament. Okay, so it can mean that. But 10 in the Old Testament usually will represent, when it's used symbolically, completeness or constancy. And also its multiples, 100 or 100 or 1,000 multiples of 10. Tithing, for instance, is based on giving 1/10 or 10% of the whole thing, and is an important biblical practice in which offering the 10th represents thanks for everything, the whole. The 10 Commandments, which are literally the 10 words, stand for the whole of God's covenant. So this can be a proverbial saying, or an allegorical saying that doesn't literally mean 10 changes of the deal. So, but it's note that it is God. Jacob is recognizing that he didn't trick Laban, God did, or God protected him. Maybe a better way to put the positive spin on that. And as he says in verse 8, the spotted shall be your wages, and then the flock bore spotted. And he said the stripe will be your wages, and then the flock bore stripe. That kind of things. Thus, God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. Note what he is actually confessing, that all he has has come from God. He didn't do anything. He didn't earn any of this. And that's a great way to look at this as well. All that you have is not by your might or your intelligence. It's from God. He may have used your might and intelligence, but it ultimately comes from God. So Jacob also is confessing here he didn't steal anything, although Laban is going to, for the most part, accuse him of this. And then Laban's sons, of course, are accusing him of this. So God is speaking to him here, but then we get to verse 11, and he's still speaking to Rachel and Leah. The angel of God said to me in a dream. So at the top there, where it says in verse 3, the Lord said to Jacob, that may have been in a dream. And he's relating this dream to his wives. This is how God often speaks to his people in the Old Testament, especially from here on out. It will be God speaking to Joseph through dreams and things like that. So, and he does this with Joseph, the father of Jesus, as well in Matthew 1. So. And in that dream, the angel of God said, now this isn't literally the angel of the Lord. However, it is the same person. It's the second person of the Trinity, which is often how we often recognize this. And when it says the angel of God, it really means God. So it's not just an angel, it is the angel of the Lord, the second person of the Trinity. Again, Jacob does not say, who are you? He's already had one experience, although it's probably at least 14 years in the past. But it's probably something he would never forget anyway. And so he responds, as Abraham did. Here I am. And so God is speaking to him. Lift your eyes and see the goats that mate with the flock or striped, spotted or mottled, for I have seen all that Laban has done to you. All you need to do is trust me. And so Jacob is learning that lesson. That's a lesson that we need to learn as well. Let's trust God. God knows what he's doing. Okay? And he's going to take care of you. That's his promise to you, and he's not going to break that promise. It just may not look like what you think it should look like. You know, he should take care of me by giving me a job that pays me plenty of money, giving me all kinds of stuff, a great house, a place to live, a country that's unified, all of these things. And God doesn't always, most of the time, God doesn't work the way we think he should. God works the way it's best for us. And that's what Jacob's lesson is here as well. I'm taking care of you. Don't worry about this. Is sort of the background or in between the lines here. And he continues on in verse 13 by saying who he is. I am. So there's Yahweh, verse 13. It starts with those words. In fact, it doesn't translate that way from the Hebrew. Ha'el. You could get to Yahweh from that, but it's spelled differently. So you don't see I am there as Yahweh. Okay, where in the New Testament we might see that. I am the God of what? Bethel, the house of God. Remember Jacob, where you anointed a pillar, made a vow to me? That's who I am. As if Jacob had any doubts. Now there is no doubt at all. So now he goes. It's time. It's time to go back home. Now, what's hidden here isn't mentioned. Will be mentioned in the next chapter. Who's waiting for him back home? Don't think too hard. Why did he leave? No, that was Isaac. Why did Jacob leave? Yeah, Esau's brother wanted to kill him. And now he's come back. And it's at least 14 years in the past, but that will become a fear of Jacob. Oh, he's going to want to kill me again. Remember, the last time you saw Esau threatened to kill him. Okay? When I catch you, I'm going to kill you. Well, that's been going on. Maybe that's in the back of his head. It's not here yet in the text. Jacob basically said, okay, it's time to go. So he arose and set his sons and his wives on camels, which is an indication of wealth. All right? It's an indication of wealth. He's got not only flocks, but he's got transportation. Remember, he walked there. Now he's going to ride home in style. Style of the day, anyway. And the reason he can do all this is because the God of Bethel, where back then he identified himself as the God of Abraham and Isaac, same God. Jacob has been living among people who worship false gods, and so he needs a reminder that there is only one true God, and that's why he brings up Bethel. Okay, it may have not occurred to him that maybe there's regional gods, and that would have been the understanding of these people back then. That each region had its own set of gods, and we're going to see that is exactly what was going on in Laban's family because of the next verses. Okay. Rachel and Leah answered them, "Is there any portion or inheritance left us in our father's house?" The tribes of Israel were each given a portion of the promised land, though the priestly clan of the Levites was given God himself, not land as their inheritance. So there is a precedent here. Is there anything, if you take us out of this land, what are we going to have? Our inheritance. We were supposed to get land here because that's what people did back then. Okay? Are we not going to be regarded by him now as foreigners? He sold us, they say in verse 15. He sold us. And he devoured our money. Okay, Laban uses up all the portion and inheritance for his own benefit or purposes, is the implication there. And all the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children now than whatever God has said to you do. So the idea here is that, I guess we're going to have some trouble here, but we're going to trust you. That's all that verse is really saying. Okay. Laban is not happy, and we see why now he is not happy, but we're going to trust you. Now, Luther said, according to God's command, it is the duty of a mother and father to assist her husband in nourishing and bringing up the children and in attending the administration of the household. These two wives complained about the cruelty of their father, inasmuch as they are already the mother of 12 children and still deprived of the things necessary for nourishing such a numerous household. So they're with Jacob. It's time for us to go. We understand that. Now, verse 17, Jacob arose. They go up to 18. He drove he drove away all his livestock, so he's taken everything with him. All his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he acquired in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan, to his father Isaac. So I don't, is Isaac still alive at this point? I'm looking ahead, just don't remember. The death of Isaac is not in this future, so we're going to assume that Isaac is no longer alive, which would make sense. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm just looking to see if it was in the text, and I don't see that it is. So, oh no, there it is. I'm sorry, it's in chapter 35. Oh, my pages must have stuck together. So Isaac is still alive, which the reason they put all this in motion, they thought Isaac was going to die, but Isaac has actually been alive this whole time. So, okay. 19. Oh, yeah, Laban had gone to shear sheep, which is usually done in the spring, but so that must be the time of year. Rachel stole father's household gods. Whoops. No. What's going on here? And remember too that Laban had put a 3-day journey between his flocks and Jacob's in chapter 30. So there's time to steal this stuff. But what's going on here? These household gods, in Hebrew the word is teraphim. And Rachel may have stolen his father's idols out of anger or spite, or she may have thought that they would grant protection. Doesn't matter, neither motive is good. Good one, should have just left him alone, but she doesn't. So Rachel is not as pure as the wind-driven snow either. She's got a little bit of a deviant streak in her as well. So she's the perfect wife for Jacob. And right away, Rachel stole her father's household gods. In verse 20, what happened? Jacob tricked Laban. Okay, remember too that he didn't announce his leaving. He just didn't tell him he was intending to flee, and so he just goes. And so in 21, he crossed the river, or the Euphrates, which marked the northern boundary of the land promised to Abraham. Apparently, this would have been chapter 15. So even though Israel really doesn't ever occupy that part of the land, it was promised to Abraham in chapter 15. And so he sets his face toward the hill country of Gilead. Now, that's why I gave you the map at the bottom of that page. Okay, Gilead, and you can see Gilead is actually a name that's used in several different places as villages. But as a land, it's right there, practically just a little bit to the up and to the right of center. You see Gad, and in parentheses Gilead. That's the land he's going to. We know that because of further the next chapter, because this is when he wrestled with God. It's on the banks of the Jabbok River, and you can see where that is at Sukkot, right, just practically in the center. Okay, so that's where he's at. Although there is a Ramoth Gilead and Jabesh Gilead, because it's Ramoth and Jabesh in that part of the territory of Gilead. This will be Gad's territory later on. That's why in the gold print, the tribes but this is coming up. This will not be until Joshua, the book of Joshua. So the dividing up the land with the children. So because Gad isn't that old, he's going to get his own land just yet. Okay, so that's where we are at there. remember nothing else about this section. Remember that God is to be trusted. Just trust that God knows what he's doing, and don't try to help him. Okay? Just use your God-given intelligence, but always guided by your faith in God and God's holy word itself, which Rachel does not do. This will come back, and the reason we learn that about Rachel is because of this next section. So, Steve, why don't you read 22 to 24?
3 days later, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. He took his men with him and pursued Jacob for 7 days until he caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. In a dream that night, God came to Laban and said to him, "Be careful not to threaten Jacob in any way."
And then, Dennis, you're up for the next big section, the 35.
And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, What have you done? That you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword. Why did you flee secretly and trick me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters therewith? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your fathers spoke to me last night, saying, Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods will not live. In the presence of your kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours and take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of 2 female servants, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken their household gods and put them in the camel saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, Let my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me. He had searched, but did not find the household gods.
All right, and then Herb, why don't you finish that up for us? Well, no. Read 2:42, sorry.
Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, What is my offense? What is my sin, that you have hotly pursued me? For you have fell through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your faithful goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was by day and night. There I was by day, the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. All the way to the end.
Yeah, to 40, what did I tell you? That's on the next page, 42, yeah.
These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock. And you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night.
Okay, Ron Studman, 43 to 50.
Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what I can do this day for these my daughters, or for the children whom they have borne. Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gathered stones, and they took stones and made a heap. And they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jagar-Shed.
Good enough.
But Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. Therefore I name it Gilead and Sihar. For he said, the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives beside my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is a witness between you and me.
Good. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap in the pillar, which I have set between you and me? This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me, to do harm. The God of Abraham, and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. And Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. And early in the morning Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. Okay, very good. So in verse 24, where did we start? We started in 22. Laban, remember that they're 3 days apart. Laban is out there, so after 3 days he figured out that Jacob is gone. And so he takes his kinsmen with him, and basically that's a small militia army. Okay, and even though Jacob has had a 3-day start, he's moving fast because it takes him a week to catch him. So, and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. You saw the map. God came to Laban the Aramean in the night in a dream and said to him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Septuagint just translates that into the Greek as anything bad, okay, but good or bad. In your heart, Luther says about this text, in your heart you have thought up a huge mass of accusations and charges to vomit out against him, but I order you not only to keep your hands off him, but not to offend him even by a word. That's how Luther translated that verse. In typical Luther fashion. He uses quite the colorful language there. Okay. So God warns him. And that's the reference at the end to the warning that Jacob mentions at we just read it. No, I can't find it. Anyway, we'll see it. I'm moving ahead myself way too fast. My brain is moving too fast. And it's tripping me up. So, let's just take it one step at a time, Ed. Laban says to Jacob, what have you done? That you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword. Laban's words are filled with anger. He disregarded the Lord's command in verse 24 by comparing his daughters to prisoners of war. He considers this an act of war. Okay. Why did you flee secretly and trick me and did not tell me so that I might have sent you away? Now this is a hypocritical statement, right? Because Laban had tricked Jacob, and projecting, accusing Jacob of what he himself is guilty of. Okay, I would have wanted to party with you. He's lying. We would assume because that's Laban's natural language, and so I wanted to just say goodbye. I would have given you a farewell dinner. You've done foolishly. That's a veiled threat, I think, too. 29 is a little bit more overt. It is in my power to do you harm, but I'm going to be magnanimous here. I'm going to be the bigger man. The God of your father spoke to me last night saying, no. He stopped me. I could have wiped you out. And that's true. That's why Jacob's leaving. So, this whole idea here that Laban is in the right. Neither one of them, of anybody that's in the right, I think it's surprisingly enough only Jacob here. Laban's wrong, Rachel's wrong. notice he did say, kiss my sons. What does he mean there? He didn't have any sons. He had only the 2 daughters. That he means grandsons there. And this is where the Hebrew gets a little bit difficult to understand. You got to look at context, because it's the same word. Sons and grandsons are the same word in Hebrew. But context tells us that it's talking about his grandchildren here. So, we get to verse 30 here. You've gone away, you've longed greatly for your father's house. Now, he's almost giving Jacob an out. Okay? It's okay that you're leaving, and it's not because I or my sons, other than, that we had talked about earlier at the beginning of this chapter, sons of Laban were saying. So he's saying, yeah, I understand you want to go home. You're homesick. You want to go home. But why did you steal my gods? Now, Jacob answers here the first one. Why did you leave? He's not answering about the father's gods. And this is interestingly an interesting one here. We'll see this later on in the book of Judges. The danger of making a vow when you don't have all the facts in your possession. Jacob thinks he is completely innocent, and in his mind he is, because he doesn't know Rachel has stolen something. And so he foolishly makes an oath. If you find any stolen goods from us, you can kill the person who stole them. He basically condemns his wife, the one he loves, and Laban's daughter to death, because he doesn't know that she stole these gods, the idols. Okay, and that's the lesson there then is don't make oaths thinking that I can make this promise. You may not have all the facts. So Jesus will pick up on this in the Sermon on the Mount about oath taking. Don't make an oath. Don't say swear to God or swear by Jerusalem or whatever it is, because you may not have all the facts. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. That's where Jesus is coming from, and this is one of the I can only imagine, but I'm thinking Jesus may have had this in mind. It gets people in trouble when you start making oaths when you don't have all the facts, and this happens in the book of Judges as well. One of the judges, in the story, a man makes an oath saying nothing is going wrong here, not knowing his daughter actually did something wrong, and the next person that comes out will be condemned to death because they have been wrong and he doesn't know it's his daughter, and they actually have to kill her. So don't make an oath. Don't be making oaths. Is the key. Okay, so anyone with whom you find the gods not the presence of our kinsmen. There's because of the people with Laban, everybody's around, they're all related. If you find anything that I have as yours, take it. Jacob didn't know that Rachel had stolen. Okay. So Laban starts going looking for him. And what did Rachel do with them? According to verse 34. She's sitting on him. She puts him in this saddlebag, or under the saddle itself, and she's sitting on him. And that may be an indication of how ridiculous these idols are. She's sitting on the gods. Okay, the idol, and so the study Bible will tell us that idolatry is ridiculous, that she could sit on them, right? Okay, so why doesn't she? So she's sitting on them, and Laban is able to search everywhere, and which he does. And so you see that why she doesn't get up. I can't get up now. It's my time of the month, basically. So that's it. And so he doesn't find them. And now Jacob's angry. You didn't find anything, and hey, all right. So you accuse me, and you have no evidence of your accusation. Okay, so he's getting a little as it says in verse 36, angry, he's getting a little upset. You have felt through all my goods. You didn't just look, you really looked. You didn't listen to me. You didn't trust me. Of course, he has good reason not to trust Jacob, but Jacob is put upon. So see it, said it. Now, if you found anything, all right, here it is. Now, I've been 20 years with you, okay? And he goes on and on and on. by the rules that you yourself set. Okay. The one in verse 39 is interesting. That what it was torn by a wild beast, I did not bring to you. I gave you, if one of your flocks was eaten and it was under my responsibility, I gave you out of my flocks. And that's actually was not something that Jacob had to do. He was being magnanimous about this. The Code of Hammurabi, which we have evidence of in archaeological digs, a shepherd was not held responsible for losses incurred by attacks of wild beasts. He didn't have to replenish that, what was lost. But he does, showing how he has been on the up and up with Laban this whole time. And so he keeps going on. Verse 40, I faithfully attended your flocks. And how long, he says in verse 41, he talks about it. 20 years, 14 years for your daughters, 7 years, and then I got to marry what I thought was Rachel. You kept, this is all implied here, but you can figure out that Laban knows exactly what Jacob is talking about. 7 years, you gave me the wrong wife. And so, 7 more years, I did get both wives, 14 years, and then there was something else as well, an extra 6 years working there. So at least 14 years has gone by, but it actually, we find here, 20 years has gone by now. And then he brings out this phrase again, you've changed my wages 10 times, not necessarily 10 times, literally, but you're constantly changing the deal. So that's what's going on here. And now we've got some interesting phrases, okay? If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac. Now, the fear here is the title. It's not necessarily an adjective. That God is the God of Abraham and the trust of Isaac. The God that is the same God. It's just Isaac trusted this God. And it had not been by my side. Once again, he doesn't say that it's his God just yet, because that's his personal, his literal personal encounter with God is still in his future a little bit. That's in the next chapter. But hey, if he had not been with me, I wouldn't have had anything. You would have taken everything, and that's why he rebuked you last night. Okay, and that's when we just talked about. So when God talks to Laban in verse 24, that's the reference there. So verse 43, Laban goes, hey, okay, the daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. So he still thinks it's all his. But what can I do this day for these, my daughters, or for their children whom you have born? Okay. All that Jacob had originally comes from Laban, at least in Laban's mind. We know better, it comes from God himself. Okay. And Laban, he makes a covenant with him in verse 44. All right, here's what we'll do. Okay. Let's do something here. And Jacob says, all right, I'm going to set up the stone, set up a pillar, and God is going to be our witness through this stone and this pillar. Because Laban has often gone back on his word, formal covenant was meant to testify that this time, both he and Jacob could be trusted. Even though we've been tricking each other all along, now we're going to set this up, and God is going to be our witness through these physical means, the pillar and the stone. The stone, but it's a group of stones. Okay, and that will be something in Israel's future as well. In Joshua, they're going to set up the 12 stones for the 12 tribes. I don't know. They don't tell us how many there are here. So Laban calls it Jagar Sahadutha, which whatever that means. But again, apparently it means a heap of stones. Gilead means actually the same type of thing. I'm not sure what the difference here is. Different languages of the name show the persistent cultural boundaries between the two men. Apparently they don't speak the same language. They're just different dialects of the same language. So two different ways of calling it. And Laban says this is the witness then. So he named it Gilead, and Mitzpah means watch post. So the Gilead is the heap of witness, Mitzvah is watch post. And the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you've oppressed my daughters, on and on and on. The other thing here is in verse 53, I think it is. We've got all these verses about the boundary. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor. Who is Nahor? Do you remember? Nahor is Abraham's brother, I think. Yeah. So that's Laban's grandfather. So so he's actually brought families together in this oath. You got Abraham and Nahor because that's the two different. Terah was the father of Abraham, I think it is. Wasn't that his name? It is in chapter 12, I believe. Terah is his name. I was drawing a blank on Abraham's name, and so that's the son of Terah. Now, Terah was an idolater. He did not believe in the one true God. But, and so maybe Nahor didn't either. But you get the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, maybe two different gods. But Abraham is the one true God. The text, to me, the text is a little bit ambiguous, although the word is used, same word for God is used throughout. And so, notwithstanding Laban's oath in verse 50, it's quite clear that he worshipped multiple gods. So, Jacob is not. Jacob only has one God, and the one true God. Laban called on gods to be the guardian of the covenant, swore by the fear of the father of Jacob, father Isaac. Jacob bound himself to the agreement in the name of the one true God. And what do they do to ratify the covenant? And this will be the end of verse 54. They ate bread and spent the night there. Okay, so this is the precedent is set for the Lord's Supper through Passover. The eating of bread and the feast, and that's the precedent here. And then verse 55 kind of wraps things up, and they do part amicably. Is the point there? It is likely that Jacob had many relatives in his household from the house of Laban who worked with him, and so they're leaving in pretty good terms. And so Jacob has nothing to fear on his northern flank behind him. So now he can turn his fear over to what's in front of him, which is the next chapter, and that would be Esau. So deception leads to dispute between relatives. Usually it's the way it always works, which threatens to break out in open warfare. Such an outcome is avoided because God steps in. Family feuds, often fueled by deceit, continue to plague relationships today. We need God to step into our lives and our families, and in Him and in His Word there is no deceit. Trust Him to forgive the contrite sinner and to quiet the angry heart. Go to Christ for pardon and for peace. So there's your lesson for all of this. This is a long way to go for this lesson. Is don't let the problems in your family destroy your families. Forgive and move on. So, don't we see a lot of that going on today? Politics is dividing even families. All right. Any questions? This is pretty good stuff, but all right. So when we come back, we'll pick this up in the fall. I may start us off. I'm toying with the idea of starting us off with a shorter, more topical study based on the Psalms for a couple weeks to kind of get us into things. I'm hoping that come September we'll be back to breakfast time. I'm getting hungry. So.
Been hungry for a year and a half.
Yeah, we haven't had breakfast in a long time.
14 months.
So that's what we'll do starting. It'll be the weekend after Labor Day weekend because I won't be here Labor Day weekend. So that September, whatever that turns out to be, I don't know. Good. All right, let's close with prayer.
September 11th.
Thank you. September 11th. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to study, and all those who have joined us online. There's quite a few people popping in and out and studying with us. Thank you for all of that. Bless us, Lord. We've asked that you would be with John as he heals up his leg, as well as Ron, who could not be with us today, and Dan, who was on traveling this weekend. Thank you for the time together as brothers to study your word. Give us a great summer, Lord, that we'll be on our own studying your word and come back in the fall ready to start again. We pray for an end to the pandemic so that we can gather together around food as well, and the fellowship